Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today we're plunging into a story that, well, on the surface seems almost deceptively simple. You've got a farm, a rebellion, animals taking charge. Sounds like a classic fable, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, yeah.
Maybe even a fairy story, as its author once described it. But as we're about to discover, beneath that sort of charming exterior of talking animals lies, well, a brutal, chilling truth about power, betrayal, and maybe the cyclical nature of oppression.
Right.
It's a narrative that, despite being penned decades ago, just continues to resonate with profound and sometimes, unsettling relevance today.
Precisely. We're embarking on a deep dive into George Orwell's seminal work, Animal Farm, published way back in 1945.
Yeah.
And this isn't just a beloved classic. It's a meticulously crafted political allegory and a scathing satire.
Definitely.
Our mission today is really to sift through the critical analyses, the literary interpretations, and, the historical accounts that you, our listener, have shared with us. We want to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge and insight.
Kind of like a shortcut.
Yeah, think of it as your shortcut to truly understanding not just what happens on Animal Farm, but why it remains so profoundly relevant, even now in the 21st century.
And that why is just crucial, isn't it? Because while it might start as like a straightforward beast fable, our sources really highlight that Animal Farm swiftly evolves. It becomes this direct, incisive critique of totalitarian regimes, the insidious corruption of revolutionary ideals, and, quite specifically, a satirical look at the Russian Revolution and the chilling rise of Stalinism.
Absolutely. This is far from a simple children's story, despite, its accessible packaging.
Right.
What's truly masterful here, and what we'll try to eliminate, is how Orwell brilliantly fuses a clear, undeniable political purpose with artistic storytelling.
He manages to take these incredibly complex, dense ideas about power, propaganda, human nature, and make them surprisingly accessible, memorable even.
Yeah, through the guise of talking animals, it's a remarkable feat.
It really is.
Through its allegorical structure and narrative techniques, Animal Farm doesn't just narrate events. It engages with the very essence of political power and its, often devastating ramifications for societal ideals.
Yeah.
This deep dive will explore how Orwell achieved that balance, ensuring his message landed with both, clarity and force.
So let's start by understanding the architect of this powerful allegory, George Orwell, born Eric Arthur Blair in 1903.
Right.
He wasn't just another writer. He was one of the most accomplished English authors, journalists, critics of his time. Big focus on political literature. Our sources consistently highlight his natural curiosity, his almost zealous enthusiasm for unmasking pretentiousness, hypocrisy, deception. He saw himself as a violent unmasker, didn't he?
He did. A writer whose pen was basically a weapon against injustice and falsehood.
So how did his own life experiences forge such a sharp critical lens?
Well, his experiences were absolutely foundational. They shaped really every facet of his worldview and, by extension, his writing. A critical turning point was his direct involvement in the Spanish Civil War. He actually went there, not as a tourist, but as a combatant, fighting for the Republican cause.
Wow.
And what he witnessed firsthand was not just the brutality of warfare, but the shocking political corruption and the ideological betrayals that, festered even within his own side.
Right.
He saw how easily totalitarian propaganda could control public opinion, even in what were supposed to be democratic contexts.
That direct exposure must have been intense.
It was. This direct, visceral exposure to the mechanisms of deception and control compelled him to write. He felt an urgent moral imperative to expose what he saw as the Stalinist corruption of original socialist ideals.
It's important to remember he was a democratic socialist himself, right?
Absolutely. But he was vehemently hostile to the Moscow-directed Stalinism. He saw it as a perversion of true socialist principles. This personal conviction really fueled his later works like Animal Farm and, of course, 1984.
And here's where it gets really interesting, the specific spark for Animal Farm. Orwell himself talked about his aha moment.
Yeah, that story's fascinating.
He was watching a young boy, maybe 10 years old, whipping this massive cart horse along a narrow path, and the image just struck him.
Yeah, with this almost electric clarity. He realized in that instant that if only such animals became aware of their strength, we should have no power over them, and that men exploit animals in much the same way as the rich exploit the proletariat.
Wow. That simple observation directly inspired the setting and the core premise.
Exactly. It allowed him to portray his profound critique of class struggle and power dynamics through the accessible, non-threatening lens of a fable.
Such a simple image, but so powerful in its implication. Really reveals the core injustice he wanted to highlight.
It speaks volumes about Orwell's unique purpose and his distinctive literary style, too. He was deeply committed to straightforward, unambiguous communication.
Right. He hated how words were twisted in politics.
Precisely. He firmly believed that words, especially in the political sphere, were all too often used to obscure, to deceive, to confuse, rather than to clarify.
So Animal Farm was his answer to that.
It was his conscious, deliberate attempt to counteract this linguistic dishonesty, to fuse his political purpose with artistic storytelling into one seamless whole.
And his prose in Animal Farm reflects that. It's very direct.
Remarkably concise, almost deceptively simple, his storytelling is direct, unembellished, which makes his complex political critique accessible to an extraordinarily wide audience, regardless of their prior political knowledge.
The narrator's voice plays a role too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Almost childlike.
Yes. The narrator maintains this unbiased, almost childlike simplicity, even when describing the most horrifying events. This narrative choice prevents you, the reader, from being overwhelmed by the complexity of political power. Instead, it draws you in with a story you can easily follow, only to reveal its deeper, chilling implications later on.
Absolutely. So, with Orwell, the architect, firmly in mind, let's journey now to Manor Farm and witness the revolution unfold, from its idealistic beginnings to its chilling, inevitable irony.
Okay, so the initial scene is set with Mr. Jones. He's the negligent, alcoholic farmer who owns Manor Farm.
Right. The classic bad owner.
Yeah. The book describes his farm as poorly run, farmhands loafing, animals barely fed, Jones's ineptness, his cruelty, his drunkenness.
Oh.
It's a clear and deliberate allegory for Tsar Nicholas II.
The last Russian monarch.
Exactly. His ineffective and often brutal rule during a time of immense social unrest and widespread poverty basically ripened the populace for revolution.
That image of him forgetting to feed the animals.
It perfectly encapsulates the kind of ineffectual, out-of-touch leadership that sparked the historical Russian Revolution. His inability to control his farm, much like the Tsar's inability to control his empire, really sets the stage for the uprising.
And this is precisely where Old Major steps in, right? He ignites the spark.
He does. He's the revered, aged prize boar, Willington Beauty, actually, who calls this clandestine conference of all the animals one night.
And he shares his dream.
A profound dream of an egalitarian society, one entirely free from human oppression, where animals control their own destiny and labor. This vision directly mirrors the ideological foundation laid by, well, Karl Marx and Vladimir Lenin.
So he's a mix of both.
Our sources indicate he's an allegorical combination of both figures, yeah. Marx provided the philosophical blueprint for communism, and Lenin applied it to the Russian context and initiated the Bolshevik Revolution.
And the song Beasts of England.
Ah, yes. His revolutionary song, with its stirring lyrics about a golden future, encapsulates those initial utopian ideals of animalism, which is, a direct allegoric reference to communism. He paints this vivid picture of a future where animals are not just free, but truly rich, enjoying the fruits of their own labor, a stark contrast to their current suffering.
But tragically, Old Major dies just after this speech.
Yeah, peacefully in his sleep just 3 nights later, before the rebellion actually happens. This directly parallels Lenin, who passed away in 1924, before fully seeing his revolutionary ideals either come to fruition or, maybe more ironically, become distorted and corrupted.
But his vision lives on.
Exactly. The dream of animalism lives on, becoming the guiding light for the eager animals, which leads us right to the uprising itself and what we might call the exhilarating honeymoon period of the revolution.
So the animals, inspired by Old Major and pushed to desperation by Jones's neglect, they actually do it. They drive him off the farm.
They do. Successfully drive him and his often abusive farmhands off the property. In a moment of collective triumph, they rename the dilapidated manor farm to the hopeful Animal Farm.
And establish the rules.
The 7 Commandments of Animalism. Painted in large, bold letters on the barn wall, a visible testament to their new order. And the most important, the one that truly defines their utopian aspirations, is all animals are equal.
This whole initial phase symbolizes the Bolshevik Revolution, right? October 1917.
Precisely. The overthrow of the Tsarist regime and the early, hopeful, idealistic days of the Soviet Union. Initially, food is plentiful, the farm runs surprisingly smoothly, and the animals are genuinely happy, brimming with the promise of self-governance and freedom.
But even then, leaders start to emerge.
Right. Within this vibrant new order, two pigs quickly emerge as key intellectual and organizational figures, though their approaches begin to diverge pretty early on.
Snowball and Napoleon.
Snowball, embodying intelligence, eloquence, organizational ability, directly parallels Leon Trotsky. He takes the initiative in educating the animals, teaching them reading and writing, setting up committees,
And a windmill.
and most notably, proposing the ambitious modernization of the farm with a windmill. This reflects Trotsky's fervent vision for spreading the revolution internationally and rapidly modernizing the USSR through industrialization. His public speaking is described as brilliant, winning over the animals with logical arguments.
Meanwhile, Napoleon.
Napoleon, while initially less vocal, is already demonstrating his shrewdness. He's focusing on acquiring power rather than engaging in the intellectual debates that consume Snowball.
So the seeds of conflict are there already.
They are. This initial period is characterized by genuine hope and the active pursuit of Old Major's vision, but the seeds of future conflict are definitely being sown beneath the surface.
But then the story takes that dark, chilling turn, much like history did. This is the turn to tyranny, specifically Napoleon's ruthless ascent to absolute power.
It is. This is where the idealism of the revolution really begins to curdle.
You see this fierce underlying rivalry developing between Snowball and Napoleon pretty much from the start.
Absolutely. While Snowball, paralleling Trotsky, is idealistic, vocal, engaging in public debate, advocating for education and welfare, Napoleon's approach is cunning, calculated, often silent.
Yeah, the text says he was not much of a talker, but with a reputation for getting his own way.
Exactly. And his most significant early strategic move, the one that really highlights his foresight in consolidating power, is secretly taking those 9 young puppies.
Right, supposedly to educate them.
Supposedly. But in reality, he's training them into a loyal, militarized force entirely beholden to him. This quiet accumulation of power, a stark contrast to Snowball's public intellectualism, perfectly sets the stage for what comes next.
Which is the coup d'etat, the terrifying moments.
Yes. During a heated debate about the windmill, where Snowball is brilliantly swaying the animals with his vision, Napoleon lets out this strange, high-pitched whimper.
And the dogs appear.
Suddenly, those 9 dogs he'd secretly trained, now grown into powerful, terrifying, fiercely loyal enforcers, burst into the barn and chase Snowball right off the farm, nearly tear him to pieces.
He just vanishes.
Escapes by mere inches, vanishes, never seen again on Animal Farm. This brutal act solidifies Napoleon's power, directly mirroring Joseph Stalin's ruthless consolidation of power in the Soviet Union and the subsequent exile, vilification, and eventual assassination of Leon Trotsky.
It's the definitive end of any pretense of shared leadership, isn't it?
Completely. The end of democratic debate, the end of the initial revolutionary ideals on Animal Farm. The era of fear has truly begun.
And Napoleon doesn't waste any time changing things.
Not at all. The moment Snowball is driven out, he immediately enacts sweeping changes to the governance structure. He abruptly announces the Sunday morning meetings where animals had debated and voted they're finished.
Just like that.
Just like that. Instead, all decisions would now be made by a special committee of pigs presided over by himself.
Total control.
Swift, decisive, concentrating all decision-making power in his hands. It reflects Stalin's absolute control over the Communist Party and the complete dismantling of the early, more democratic structures of the Soviet Union. The animals are now effectively subjugated not to the ideal of equality, but to Napoleon's authoritarian rule. It foreshadows everything that's coming.
What's truly fascinating and deeply unsettling is how Animal Farm then meticulously illustrates the precise mechanisms of this totalitarian control. And it starts with propaganda, right? Personified by Squealer.
Ah, Squealer. Napoleon's indispensable second-in-command and, crucially, his chief propagandist. He's renowned for his extraordinary ability to, well, turn black into white, with his eloquent, persuasive, utterly manipulative speeches.
The book describes him physically, too, doesn't it? Skipping and whisking his tail.
It does, as if to emphasize his slippery nature. He's a truly brilliant talker. He is essentially a collective portrait of the Soviet nomenclatura, the elite ruling class, and the compliant journalists, particularly those from Pravda.
Pravda meaning the truth, ironically.
Exactly. Despite its role as a mouthpiece for government lies, Squealer's essential role is to justify every single twist and turn in Napoleon's policy, every contradiction, every oppressive decree, no matter how it violates the original ideals of animalism.
He's the spin doctor par excellence.
And he's an absolute master at rewriting history and justifying lies. It's incredible. It really is. Think about it. He claims credit for the windmill idea, even though it was explicitly Snowball's plan, debated widely.
Right, everyone knew that.
Then he relentlessly smears Snowball as a saboteur, a criminal, a collaborator with humans, despite Snowball's clear heroism in the Battle of the Cowshed.
And he makes Napoleon the hero of that battle instead.
Goes so far as to falsely represent Napoleon as the main hero, when the animals dimly remember Napoleon wasn't even really there. And perhaps most chillingly, he utterly falsifies the circumstances of Boxer's tragic death.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
Claims Boxer died peacefully at a hospital surrounded by friends, when in truth, Napoleon sold him to a horse slaughterer, a knacker, for money to buy whiskey for the pigs.
Just brutal.
This systematic, relentless revision of history directly alludes to the Soviet government's extensive and brutal efforts to control public belief by erasing inconvenient truths and fabricating new ones.
It's a chilling demonstration of how a controlled narrative can just suppress dissent.
And maintain compliance. Squealer consistently pacifies the animals, even amidst their increasing hardship and dwindling rations, with the constant retort that they are better off than they were under Mr. Jones.
Always bringing Jones back.
Always. Invokes the specter of Jones's return whenever there's murmuring or discontent. This tactic, often backed up by complex statistics the other animals can't understand, demonstrates the insidious power of misinformation and psychological manipulation.
The truth becomes whatever the leaders say it is.
Exactly. No matter how illogical or contradictory, it's a profound warning about critical thinking and, frankly, the dangers of intellectual laziness.
And if propaganda doesn't work, there's always fear. Enforced by Napoleon's secret police. The dogs.
Right, the 9 dogs, raised by Napoleon from puppies. His powerful and terrifying security force. Fiercely loyal to him, devoid of independent thought, trained to obey without question.
They represent the NKVD.
They represent the secret police in the Stalinist structure, particularly the NKVD, the Soviet Union's internal security agency responsible for enforcing political compliance through terror. Their silent, menacing presence ensures the animals remain docile and obedient. Disobedience means immediate, violent reprisal.
Which leads to the purges, one of the most horrifying parts.
It's unforgettable. Napoleon gathers the animals, compels various individuals, chickens, sheep, even other pigs, to confess to non-existent crimes, conspiring with Snowball, things like that.
Forced confessions.
Exactly. And as soon as these confessions are uttered, the dogs immediately leap upon them, tear out their throats, execute them on the spot.
It's a direct parallel to Stalin's Great Purges.
A direct, chilling allusion. And the infamous Moscow trials of the late 1930s, where countless innocent people, including many old Bolsheviks, were forced under torture or threat to confess to fabricated conspiracies and were then executed.
It creates this atmosphere of just terror.
Widespread, arbitrary terror. It ensured absolute compliance and utterly stifled any potential for rebellion or even critical thought. Cemented Napoleon's absolute, unquestioned authority.
And another key part of this control is the erosion of the 7 commandments themselves. The original ideals.
A critical element, yes. It really highlights the gradual corruption. These were the foundational ideals, the moral bedrock established in the heady days after the revolution.
Meant to unite animals against humans and stop them becoming like humans.
Exactly. Initially very clear, absolute. No animal shall sleep in a bed. No animal shall drink alcohol. No animal shall kill any other animal. Simple, unambiguous.
But then they start changing.
Subtly, secretly, insidiously changed by the pigs, especially Squealer, to justify their increasingly human-like, decadent, oppressive behavior. Suddenly, the commandments are found altered on the barn wall.
With little additions.
Small, but significant caveats. No animal shall sleep in a bed with sheets. No animal shall drink alcohol to excess. No animal shall kill any other animal without cause.
So sneaky.
It's an insidious process of manipulation. The very principles of the revolution warped to serve the powerful. The animals' dim memories, Squealer's persuasive rhetoric, ensure these changes are accepted, maybe with a vague sense of unease, but accepted nonetheless.
And this leads to the ultimate corruption, right? The final commandment.
The ultimate, most chilling perversion. The total abridgment of the original 7 commandments to a single, horrifying maxim. One morning, the animals wake up, the whole list is gone, replaced by one stark sentence.
All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others.
That's the one. This single maxim, seemingly a contradiction in terms, perfectly epitomizes the hypocrisy, the moral degradation, the complete betrayal of the revolution's ideals under Napoleon.
It just lays it bare.
It showcases in a single devastating stroke how political dogma, once a beacon of liberation, can be turned into malleable propaganda, twisted beyond recognition to serve naked self-interest and power. It's profoundly cynical.
It's just so stark. And the irony is biting. Even that early slogan, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, gets twisted.
Yes, the one taught to the sheep to simplify animalism. As the pigs start walking upright, wearing clothes, Squealer meticulously trains the sheep to bleat a new, terrifyingly ironic version. 4 legs good, 2 legs better.
Oh, wow.
It reflects the pigs' complete transformation into the very oppressors they overthrew. A horrifying full circle, the ultimate undeniable betrayal of animalism's foundational principles.
The simplicity makes it even more impactful, like a gut punch delivered with a nursery rhyme.
Exactly. And to truly grasp the depth of Orwell's critique, it's crucial to understand how the characters serve as these meticulously crafted historical mirrors.
Yeah, the allegorical framework is key. Let's start with the core leadership. Napoleon is clearly Stalin.
Thinly veiled, yes. His character perfectly embodies Stalin's ruthless ambition, his consolidation of power through deceit, manipulation, brutal force, eliminating rivals, cultivating that cult of personality.
Take the puppies.
The way he takes the puppies, molds them into blind, obedient tools of control, directly mirrors Stalin's use of youth organizations and secret police. He's pragmatic, cruel, singularly focused on power.
And Snowball is Trotsky.
Embodies Leon Trotsky, Stalin's primary rival. Snowball is intelligent, idealistic, eloquent, a true revolutionary. Advocates passionately for spreading animalism, for the windmill, genuinely believes in the ideals.
But his fate mirrors Trotsky's too.
Perfectly. Driven from the farm by Napoleon's dog, subsequently vilified, falsely made out as the chief villain and saboteur, mirrors Trotsky's exile, assassination, and vilification in Soviet propaganda. Even his name, Snowball, maybe suggests a purity that melts away.
And Old Major represents Marx and Lenin.
An allegorical combination, yes. Marx for the philosophy, Lenin for leading the revolution, represents the ideology, the initial inspiration, but crucially dies before seeing its corruption.
Like Lenin.
And his skull being disinterred, put on display, that powerfully recalls the embalmed body of Lenin in Red Square, a permanent symbol.
Okay, let's turn to the exploited masses. Boxer is just heartbreaking.
Perhaps the most tragic figure. The loyal, immensely strong, incredibly hardworking cart horse, his unwavering commitment, tireless labor, those simple mottos.
Napoleon is always right. I will work harder.
Perfectly symbolize the hardworking but incredibly naive, easily manipulated working class, the proletariat of the Soviet Union. His faith in the leadership, even as things get worse, is just, heartbreaking.
On his end, sold to the knacker.
Sold for glue to buy the pigs more whiskey when he collapses from exhaustion, no longer useful. Reflects the callousness of a totalitarian dictator discarding his most loyal citizens. He's often compared to Alexei Stakhanov, that Soviet model worker.
Serving the system more than himself.
Exactly. And alongside Boxer, there's Clover.
The mare. She represents a different part of the working class.
Yeah, the maternal, hardworking mare. Represents another segment. Loyal but easily fooled. Embodies their endurance, loyalty, quiet suffering, but also their inability or unwillingness to critically analyze things.
She senses things are wrong but can't act.
She does, especially with the commandments, but lacks the education, the self-confidence to articulate doubts or challenge the pigs. She remains passively complicit, unable to truly see or change the tyranny.
And then you have animals with different responses, like Benjamin the donkey.
Ah, Benjamin, the cynic. One of the oldest, wisest animals, one of the few who can read properly, besides the pigs.
But he doesn't use it like the pigs do.
No, he uses literacy for observation, not manipulation. Deeply skeptical. Famously comments, "Life will go on as it has always gone on, that is, badly." He's not fooled by Squealer or Napoleon.
But he doesn't do anything. Until Boxer.
Crucially, he largely remains apolitical. Chooses not to act on his knowledge until Boxer's life is directly at stake. Represents those intellectuals or citizens who see the truth but stay silent or feel powerless. A critique of intellectual inaction. Some scholars even see a touch of Orwell himself in Benjamin's skepticism.
Interesting. Then there's Molly, the opposite of Benjamin almost.
Molly, the vain young mare. Much more concerned with personal comforts than revolution. Misses her ribbons, sugar cubes, pampering under Jones.
So she leaves.
quickly finds the communal, hard-working life unappealing and quietly leaves the farm to pull a cart for another human, accepting sugar and ribbons for her freedom. Symbolizes those self-interested individuals, maybe bourgeoisie or aristocracy, who prioritized comfort over ideals and left revolutionary Russia. The white emigres.
And Moses the Raven.
Yeah.
Religion.
Yes, Moses. Initially disappears, then returns later. Preaches about Sugar Candy Mountain, that idyllic afterlife paradise. Symbolizes institutionalized religion.
The opium of the masses.
Orwell portrays him as the black raven of priestcraft, promising pie in the sky when you die, and faithfully serving whoever happens to be in power. Interestingly, Napoleon initially dismisses him, but later tolerates him, even gives him beer. Mirrors how Stalin, despite early anti-religious campaigns, strategically brought back the Russian Orthodox Church during World War II. Used religion to pacify the populace, foster unity during crisis, acknowledged its power to control through promises of a better afterlife.
The humans are allegories too, right? Frederick and Pilkington.
Meticulously crafted reflections of historical figures and geopolitical relationships. Mr. Frederick, tough, shrewd, ruthless owner of Pinchfield Farm, hard-fisted, a cheater.
He's Hitler.
Clearly represents Adolf Hitler. Briefly allies with Napoleon, buys timber, then betrays him with counterfeit money, launches a brutal attack, blows up the windmill. Unmistakable allegories for the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact and Operation Barbarossa.
Our pact and the invasion.
Exactly. The non-aggression pact, then Hitler's surprise invasion of the Soviet Union in '41, devastating Soviet infrastructure.
And Mr. Pilkington, the other farmer.
Easygoing but crafty owner of Foxwood Farm, described as old-fashioned and neglected, represents the Western allies, specifically Britain and the U.S.
Their relationship with Animal Farm is complicated.
Very. Characterized by mutual suspicion, shifting allegiances, culminates in that ironic dinner party scene at the end. Napoleon hosts Pilkington, both leaders now indistinguishable.
And cheating at cards.
Toasting each other, then simultaneously trying to cheat by playing an ace of spades. Perfectly encapsulates the underlying tensions and distrust that would quickly lead to the Cold War despite their wartime alliance. Reflects the post-war geopolitical landscape.
Don't forget Mr. Whymper, the human liaison.
Right, the solicitor hired by Napoleon as intermediary with the outside world. First, human the pigs openly engage with post-revolution. Whymper is cynical, calculating, interested only in profit.
Doesn't care about the regime itself.
Cares little about its true nature, only its commercial opportunities. Represents those Western capitalists and businesses willing to trade with the Soviet Union, often turning a blind eye to its totalitarian excesses. Suggests their complicity in normalizing and profiting from the regime.
What's truly powerful about Animal Farm and why it resonates so much is that its message goes beyond just the Russian Revolution. It feels timeless.
Absolutely. It's a timeless cautionary tale.
It really is. The narrative brings us to that chilling full-circle conclusion. The cycle of power is complete. The pigs become utterly indistinguishable from the humans they overthrew.
That final iconic scene, the animals outside, peering through the window.
Looking from pig to man and from man to pig and from pig to man again, but already it was impossible to say which was which. It's devastating.
Symbolizes the complete, utter betrayal of the revolution's ideals. The reestablishment of the very tyranny they sought to overthrow, just with new, maybe more brutal masters. The hopeful dream of Animal Farm devolves back into Manor Farm, but with the added horror of self-inflicted oppression.
And this hammers home Orwell's core thesis, doesn't it? About violent revolutions led by power-hungry people.
Exactly. That violent conspiratorial revolution led by unconsciously power-hungry people, those driven by control, not emancipation, often only leads to a change of masters, not genuine improvement, equality, or freedom for the masses.
True change only comes when?
True, radical, lasting improvement, Orwell suggests through the animals' disappointment and powerlessness, occurs only when the masses are alert, critically engaged, and know when to chuck out their leaders as soon as the latter have done their job. The animals' inability to do this, their naive trust, their intellectual laziness, that's depicted as their undoing.
And this pushes Animal Farm way beyond just the Soviet Union. It's a universal warning.
Against any form of totalitarianism, any unchecked authority, the insidious dangers of propaganda, manipulated language, our sources indicate its profound, unsettling relevance to the rise of populism today, misinformation, new forms of authoritarian leadership emerging globally.
The patterns repeat.
The parallels, though not one-to-one, are often striking. It's a testament to its eternal qualities, illustrating patterns of power and control that recur throughout history.
And that universality is largely down to the sheer effectiveness of Orwell's political satire.
Definitely. His brilliant use of a simple animal fable, that straightforward, accessible language, the biting, dark humor, it makes his complex political critique so accessible, so memorable, so resonant.
Allows readers to grasp profound truths without needing a history degree.
Exactly. Even those without extensive knowledge of Soviet history can grasp truths about human nature, the corrupting nature of power, the mechanics of oppressive systems, without being overwhelmed. It's a masterful blend of creative storytelling and incisive social commentary.
The story of Animal Farm's publication is pretty telling too, isn't it? Adds another layer.
Indeed. It faced significant publication difficulties. Orwell got rejected by no fewer than 4 publishers.
Including his regular one. And T.S. Eliot.
Yes, Victor Gollancz, his regular publisher, and even the esteemed T.S. Eliot at Faber and Faber. The main fear during World War II was that printing such a scathing anti-Soviet allegory would upset the crucial wartime alliance between Britain, the U.S., and the Soviet Union against Nazi Germany.
Wasn't there a spy involved?
There was. One official who advised against its publication was later discovered to be a Soviet spy. Highlights the real political pressure and censorship attempts. Eliot himself, while acknowledging its good writing, felt it wasn't convincing from a Trotskyite viewpoint, suggesting maybe what was needed was more public-spirited pigs.
Which is incredibly ironic given the book.
Wonderfully ironic, yes, given what the book ultimately reveals about the pigs.
But then, fate twists. The war ends. The Cold War begins.
And the book, initially shunned for its anti-Soviet bias, found its moment. Achieved massive, unprecedented commercial success, especially in the West, became a powerful, widely embraced tool against communism, aligning perfectly with the new geopolitical climate.
From liability to weapon.
Its reception evolved dramatically, yeah.
But even with success, it faced controversies.
Censorship.
Enduring controversies, yes. Challenged, even banned in schools across the U.S. over political theories or masses revolting. Challenges from the John Birch Society in '65. Attempts to limit access in libraries. A temporary ban in Bay County, Florida.
And internationally, too. Its power to provoke is persistent. Prevented from being featured at the Moscow International Book Fair in '77. Banned from schools in the UAE over pigs or alcohol. Even in modern China, while the book might be sold, online discussions about it were censored as recently as 2018, shows its continued threat to authoritarian control.
Its cultural impact, though, is just undeniable, foundational work.
Absolutely. A foundational work of modern political literature taught widely everywhere. Won awards, like the retrospective Hugo. Consistently resonates across generations.
From students to political analysts.
Its uncanny ability to keep striking a chord on power, corruption, freedom, underscores its eternal qualities. A testament to how literature, even a seemingly simple fable, can dissect and illuminate the most complex truths of history and human nature.
And that brings us, I think, to the conclusion of our deep dive into George Orwell's Animal Farm. We've explored its origins, its brilliant allegory, the chilling mechanisms of control, and its enduring, ever-relevant legacy.
Yeah, quite a journey through it.
We truly hope you've gained profound new insights from this exploration, understanding more deeply how a seemingly simple fable can unpack such complex truths about history, political power, and, well, the human condition.
It's a book that really invites constant reevaluation, doesn't it?
It definitely does.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean for you, our listener, right now, as you navigate the complexities of our contemporary world?
That's the question, isn't it?
Exactly. As you observe political movements, leaders today, locally or globally, what echoes of Animal Farm do you see? What familiar patterns of rhetoric, control, maybe societal complacency jump out at you? And what vigilance do we, as individuals, as societies, owe to ourselves and each other to safeguard revolutionary ideals, whatever they may be, from the corrupting, insidious influence of power? That's definitely a thought to ponder.
We'd encourage you to revisit Animal Farm with this deeper understanding. Maybe you'll see new layers you hadn't noticed before.
Or maybe explore other works of political allegory. They continue to challenge and illuminate our understanding of the world.
There's always more to learn and uncover, for sure.
Thank you for joining us on The Deep Dive. We'll be back soon with another stack of sources and another fascinating topic to unpack.